Hi, everyone. We're back with our speakers, and I'm going to ask Chris some questions. Chris, can you tell me what the first animals were on Earth?
I can tell you exactly what the first creatures were on Earth because they probably weren't fossilized whenever they appeared, but they probably looked like sponges. So if you've ever seen SpongeBob SquarePants or know of what a sponge is in the sea, they're essentially just a whole bunch of cells that are stuck together. You can even you can put them in a blender and then put them in water and they'll reform. So you might not even think of them as animals, but they are the simplest type of animal that we know of. And we have evidence that they go back about 700 or 800 million years. And so, because they're so soft, they don't fossilize very well. So, it's not entirely sure. We just have little chemical markers of them rather than their bodies. But the first animals probably looked a little bit like sponges. So, SpongeBob SquarePants, I think the first animal.
I'm sure that SpongeBob would be honored. They should incorporate that into the series somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's an educational show, you know.
Absolutely. Um, Another popular children's viewing object is what if the world was like the Lorax with no more trees?
So I've never actually heard of the Lorax, but the thought of a treeless Earth is actually pretty interesting. So some of you have probably heard of trees being the lungs of the Earth. What this saying comes from is that they suck up the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, turn that into more plant, and then breathe out oxygen. So it's the reverse of what we do. And although trees are very, very important for that, about half of that is done in the ocean. So the ocean has there's no real way to grow up in the ocean. You're sort of just floating in it. So there's these things called phytoplankton, which are green tree-like things, but they're single cells that are floating around in the ocean. And they are just as much the lung. They're the left lung, and the trees are the right lung on the Earth. And so we need both the land and the sea to properly regulate the CO2 and oxygen in the atmosphere. But I have to look up what the Lorax is to fully understand.
So the Lorax is Dr. Seuss. So now we'll transition from Dr. Seuss into anime. Are some sort of skyfish real?
There is a flying fish, so it doesn't actually fly, but its fins have sort of evolved into things that look like wings, and it jumps out of the surface of the water and actually glides a little bit. They do this in shoals and schools in order to escape prey. But there's sort of an interesting, so I say that I study other planets, and the reason why we don't have sort of so the biggest thing that's alive today are whales, and sorry, my accent in that word is awful, but like the blue whale is the biggest thing that's alive today. But we can't have things that are that big flying around the ocean, the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is really thin. But if you imagine life evolving on a planet with a really dense atmosphere, then all of a sudden the atmosphere is kind of like the ocean. It's denser, so there may be whales floating around in the atmosphere, and fish. So whales aren't fish, and whales are mammals, but you might get things that are as big as whales that could float around in the atmosphere. But no, we don't have any actual flying fish. We have gliding fish, but they're called flying fish. If that makes sense.
Oh, that sounds super cool. That'd be really cool to see. The last question that I have for you is how did most organisms come to be?
So for that, I have a book for you. It is called On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, published in 1959. So Charles Darwin was not the first person to discover evolution. If you're talking about evolution as the changing of one species to another, that is actually, there were multiple people kind of pondering that process at the same time Darwin was in the 1800s. What Darwin did was discover the mechanism by which it happens. And so just about every species that you know of today evolved through essentially you can make through three different assumptions evolution happens. The first is that more offspring are born than can survive. The second is that the traits, the features of those offspring are inherited from the parents. So you look a little bit more like your parents than you don't. And the third is that there is some selection in the environment. So those three things together mean that some offspring will die and they won't pass on those genes that are not suited to the environment. And through generation and generation, the environment kind of cuts out the bad genes in some sense. And over millions of years, species change. So that is the answer to almost every question of how did that species come to be. Of course, there are specifics as to, what was the selection and all of this stuff, but that is the broad answer.
Thanks so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
So that sounds really heavy reading. I think I would rather take up the Lorax or maybe an episode of SpongeBob, but it's really essential to understanding biology. So maybe shifting a little bit from biology or the study of ancient biology up to chemistry and fireworks, we're going to ask Claire some more follow-up questions. And so the students were really excited about the different colors, and someone even had the list of all the different salts and colors, right? But one of the questions came up was, can you make a pink or a black firework? Because they're not sure exactly if those were mentioned.
Yeah, so there's some questions on like black and brown fireworks. And there, the problem is that if you're, looking at them in the night sky, you want to have a color that can really stand out. So that's one of the reasons that I think people aren't as interested in those. And yeah, they're also just harder to see. I'm also not exactly sure if a black firework would be possible because black is absorbing all the colors. So, you could just have bits of material maybe flying, but it wouldn't be like the flame that we would think it is. It's hard to get black flame.
I see. I was thinking if it was possible, maybe you would use those fireworks during the day and you wouldn't have to wait forever until the sun sets.
Yeah, that's an idea.
But it sounds like this.
Yeah, but for the pink question, there definitely are pink fireworks. And I think in one of the slides I showed, you can actually just mix together different colors to get other colors as well. So you can have combinations of those salts to get even new colors and different colors.
Awesome. So along those lines about different colors, so can you use other elements or can any other elements be used than the ones you listed to make different colors?
Yeah, so that's definitely possible, and there's still research going on into this. But the problem then gets a little bit to cost, right? So you want to use the most easily available elements. So like I mentioned, sodium and lithium, those are some of the ones that are more readily available. So once you start getting into some more obscure elements, it's maybe not the best idea to be using those in fireworks because they're harder to come by. They might be worse for the environment. And they might not be as safe. They could be toxic. So there's, things to keep in mind, which is why I think sometimes the ones that we've used so far are in many ways the best ones because they're the most abundant and the most easy to come by, the least expensive, and they work really well.
I see. So unless you're trying to flex on your friends, you wouldn't want to light a gold firework up or something, right?
Yeah.
You probably heard if you're living in New Haven, lots of fireworks going on all over the time, right? And some of them are legal, some are not legal. So is there something that's put into illegal fireworks that makes them different than normal fireworks, or what really makes a firework illegal?
Yeah, so really illegal fireworks are no different from legal fireworks. You've got the same components. You've got something for the explosive, you've got an oxidant and a fuel, you've got the different materials to make the different colors. But really the main thing is that illegal fireworks aren't being set off by people who have a lot of safety training, who have the right certification, who have gone through the process to make sure that the environment is really safe, that the fireworks are not going to hurt anyone. So that's really the main reason that fireworks are illegal in a lot of places. And because they are explosives, they do produce a lot of heat and energy, like we talked about. A lot of material too can come out and really fast and explosively, and that can really hurt someone. So that's the main reason that fireworks are illegal in a lot of places.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. So safety and or different laws, not necessarily the components.
Exactly.
So you did mention about, a lot of material coming out at once. So when you do use fireworks, how is it that different colors come out at different times? I've always found that really fascinating myself as well.
That's a great question. And I don't know the exact answer to this. That would be something that you could look into. And I'm sure there's a lot of research being done on that. I think some of the ways is how, like I was mentioning with the shapes, how the different pieces are packed together. So if you have certain colors, maybe more toward the center of that pack or more towards the outside, they might light up at different times. You can also have, different mixtures of materials that, once one gets to a certain temperature, it'll show a color, and then one at a different temperature, it'll show a different color. So yeah, there's a lot of science that goes into that, figuring out what temperature different colors show up, what different materials make different colors at different temperatures and times, and then how to pack those together. So yeah, it's really, really interesting and really cool. And I love seeing all the different kinds of fireworks in those, big shows, and think about, what science, how people had to think about trying to make those and put those together. And also like what other ideas there are out there and what new possibilities there are.
Awesome. The cutting edge of fireworks science is sure to amaze all of us. Well, thank you very much to both Claire and Chris, and we are looking forward to seeing the next round of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.